This photo became the last for the 111 passengers aboard the flight. It was taken just moments before the emergency landing of United Airlines Flight DC-10. This crash remains one of the most well-known in aviation history. But what really happened that day? On July 19, 1989, the aircraft was on a domestic flight from Denver to Philadelphia, with a scheduled stopover in Chicago. However, that stopover was never meant to happen. There were 296 people on board, including 11 crew members and 285 passengers. 1 hour and 7 minutes after takeoff, at an altitude of 37,000 feet, the number 2 engine, located in the tail section, failed. Unfortunately, the debris, weighing almost 350 pounds, caused by the engine failure, damaged almost all the plane's flight control systems. At the time of the engine failure, the plane was making a slight right turn, a very routine maneuver. However, due to the loss of hydraulic fluid, the rightward tilt of the aircraft began to increase. It's important to highlight the professionalism of Captain Alfred Haynes and First Officer Bill Reckards, who were able to stabilize the aircraft by reducing thrust on engine number 1, on the left side, and increasing thrust on engine number 3, on the right side. At that moment, the engines located on the wings were the only controllable elements of the aircraft, but soon the aircraft began to tilt heavily to the right again. When the first and second pilots were at a loss for what to do, something unexpected happened. Among the passengers aboard the plane was 46-year-old Dennis Fitch, an experienced pilot who had worked for United Airlines for 21 years and 6 months, since January 2, 1968. On this occasion, Dennis was not on duty. He was flying as a regular passenger. Through the senior flight attendant, with whom he had worked at the training center and was familiar, Dennis offered his assistance to the crew. At 3:29 p.m., the captain invited Fitch into the cockpit. Dennis examined the ailerons and spoilers on the plane's wings through the cabin windows and determined that they were not damaged, but had been deflected upward and were immobile. Despite not knowing Fitch personally, the captain trusted him with the control of the engines, the only controllable parts of the aircraft. Taking over the engine controls, Fitch realized that the plane could not fly straight and make left turns. The only feasible way to navigate the plane toward an airport for an emergency landing was by executing a series of right turns. After executing several right turns, the crew managed to direct the plane towards Sioux City Airport. The decision was made to continue making right turns to guide the aircraft to the nearest airport for an emergency landing, and Sioux City was selected. Unfortunately, both the captain and Fitch knew they would have to make at least one left maneuver to line the aircraft up with the runway. Faced with limited options, they made the only feasible decision in that situation. They decided to dump almost all the fuel, which significantly reduced the aircraft's weight. At this moment, the crew fully reduced thrust on engine number 1 and set engine number 3 to take off power. This allowed them to execute the crucial left turn, positioning the plane for its final approach to the runway. This is a photograph of United Airlines Flight 232 shortly before landing, with the red markings indicating the areas of damage to the tail section. 11 minutes before landing, at 3:49 p.m., the landing gear was deployed. Only 14 kilometers remained to the runway. As the plane neared the runway, Captain Alfred Haynes realized that both the horizontal and vertical speeds were too high, but there was no way to reduce them. The spoilers and flaps were inoperative. He decided to reduce engine thrust, but the plane dangerously lowered its nose. Dennis Fitch continued to manage the engine power, monitoring flight parameters on the second officer's instruments. Just before landing, he noticed the aircraft veering right, and the right wing suddenly dipped. At that moment, Captain Haynes shouted, "Good!" and a sound of impact followed. At 4:16 p.m. CDT, the plane's right main landing gear touched runway 22, and it began to skid along the runway. Due to the constant rightward tilt, the right wheel was first to make contact with the asphalt, causing it to detach. A second later, the tail section of the plane separated. After the right wheel detached, the plane was violently pushed to the right and skidded off the runway, coming to rest in a cornfield. The aircraft flipped over one final time, and the front section of the plane, including the cockpit and business class, was torn off. Rescue teams were prepared for such a scenario and quickly arrived at the crash site. Although the most intense flames near the fuel tanks were extinguished, local fires continued to burn inside the wreckage of the fuselage. The smoke from these fires led to many of the injured and trapped passengers suffocating. The firefighting efforts lasted for 2 hours. This diagram shows the injuries sustained by passengers depending on their location within the aircraft. The final investigation report was released on November 1, 1990. According to the report, the cause of the destruction of engine number 2 was a fatigue crack in the rotor, which had gone unnoticed during the aircraft's routine maintenance inspections. Following the disaster, several changes were implemented to enhance safety. Hydraulic locks were made mandatory in the hydraulic systems to prevent complete system failure. The procedures for inspecting aircraft engines were revised, and updates were made to pilot training programs. These challenges have likely contributed to preventing similar catastrophes in the years since. Before you is a photo of a typical American teenager, Daylenn Pua. In this photo, he's 18 years old, and he will forever remain 18, as it was at this age that he mysteriously and without a trace disappeared. His grandmother lived in a small town called Waianae, on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. At that time, among other things, the island was known for one landmark, the Stairway to Heaven. The Stairway to Heaven, also known as the Haiku Stairs, consists of 3,922 steps leading up to the peak of the Kūlau mountain ridge, where a U.S. Navy radio tower was built. In some sections, the trail becomes nearly vertical. In the 1980s, the staircase became so popular that it attracted hundreds of thousands of tourists and thrill seekers each year. Unfortunately, its condition left much to be desired, resulting in numerous accidents annually. Later in 2003, the staircase was closed for repairs, but this did not reduce the number of accidents and fatalities. Consequently, in 2013, the staircase was completely closed to tourists, and a police patrol was stationed at the entrance daily to prevent adventurers from entering. However, a few determined individuals managed to find hidden paths and attempted to climb it. One of them was Daylenn Pua. On February 25th, he posted on his Facebook page, announcing that he was about to embark on this crazy adventure and asked his friends to wish him luck. And early in the morning of February 26th, he wrote the following. Unfortunately, that post would be Daylenn's last on Facebook. It is known for certain that he managed to get past security and access the trail, as on February 26th at 11 a.m., he sent several photos from Haiku to his friends. One of these photos would become significant later, possibly holding a clue to Daylenn's disappearance. That evening, his family reported him missing to the police when he did not return home. The search lasted 4 days. Unfortunately, the first day was marked by a severe thunderstorm, which greatly hampered efforts. In the following days, search teams used dogs, helicopters, and special infrared equipment, but to no avail. Just as authorities decided to call off the search, something unexpected happened. A group of tourists, who had also snuck onto the stairs, reported hearing someone calling for help. This renewed the family's hope, prompting the search to continue for one more day, but again it yielded no results. Afterward, police revisited the last photos sent to Daylenn's friends. Upon closer inspection, they noticed that in the central part of the image, it appeared as if someone was hiding in the bushes. Some believed it was just an optical illusion and the play of light on the leaves and branches. Others were convinced it was indeed a man concealed in the vegetation. One theory suggested that this was a stalker who targeted tourists attempting to climb the stairs, and that he might have seen Daylenn's post on social media and lay in wait for him. Unfortunately, to this day, no further clues have surfaced regarding the case. In 2021, Local authorities decided that the best course of action was not just to close the staircase, but to dismantle it completely. Mora Murray's disappearance remains a mystery to this day. Mora Murray was 21 years old when she was involved in a car accident on Route 112 near Woodsville, New Hampshire. This incident occurred on February 9, 2004, and it was the last time anyone saw Mora. To understand what might have happened that evening, it's important to learn a bit about Mora herself. She was born into a large family, with 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and her parents separated when she was only 6 years old. She spent most of her life living with her mother. During her school years, Mora was an outstanding athlete and represented her school in track and field competitions. However, after finishing high school, she surprised her relatives by choosing to attend a military academy and pursued a degree in nursing. Another strange incident in Mora's life was when she once ordered food using someone else's credit card, which was essentially considered theft. However, she was soon let off with a warning for good behavior. The next odd event happened just a few days before the ill-fated accident. On February 5th, Mora had a conversation with her sister Kathleen, with whom she had a close relationship. Mora was on a night shift at her campus job when the conversation took place. According to a security guard who found her crying afterward, she even fainted and managed to utter only 2 words, "My sister." At the time, no one understood the significance of these words, but their meaning became clearer many years later. It turned out that her sister Kathleen had just recovered from alcohol addiction, but on that same day, her husband had taken her to a liquor store. This deeply upset Mora. The series of strange events continued in the days leading up to the accident. On Saturday, February 7th, Mora's father Fred came to Amherst. He later told investigators that on that day, he and his daughter went shopping and then had dinner with one of Mora's friends. Mora then drove her father to his hotel before heading to a party with her friends, after which on February 8th, she got into a minor accident, crashing into a guardrail. It would later be revealed that the insurance company covered all the damages, but Mora's psychological state continued to deteriorate day by day. On the day of her accident and disappearance, her first recorded contact was with her boyfriend. She sent him a message saying that she loved him and would call him soon. However, that call never happened. At 1:24 p.m., Mora sent an email to the head of the nursing school, stating that she would be out of town for a week due to a death in the family. However, this turned out to be a lie. What could have compelled her to fabricate something as serious as the death of a family member? At approximately 3:30 p.m., she left the campus in her black 1996 Saturn sedan. Classes at the university had been canceled that day due to a snowstorm. Later, when police investigated the trunk of her car, they found most of her belongings inside. Additionally, in her room on campus, the pictures had been taken off the walls. This didn't seem like a temporary departure. Instead, it suggested that she might have planned to leave for good. At 3:40 p.m., Mora withdrew $280 from an ATM. The surveillance camera captured her at that moment, and she was alone. This was the last known image of Mora. 10 minutes later, she purchased several bottles of wine, which might have contributed to the accident. At 4:37 p.m., Mora checked her voicemail, marking the last recorded use of her mobile phone. Around 7:30 p.m., witnesses reported seeing Mora's black Saturn sedan traveling east on Route 112. However, the car later veered off the road and crashed into a ditch. A passing motorist stopped and asked if she needed help. Mora declined, saying she had already called emergency services. The driver continued to the nearest house, and despite Mora's response, called for help anyway. When emergency responders arrived at the scene at 7:50 p.m., the car was empty. Mora, her mobile phone, and several credit cards were gone. However, neither the credit cards nor the phone were ever used again. The search yielded no results. Not a single trace of Mora was found. Naturally, such a case gives rise to many speculations. Some believe that Mora fled to start a new life, while others think she was kidnapped. One of the theories that law enforcement leans toward is that Mora might have been mentally unwell and could have harmed herself. This theory is supported by the events leading up to her disappearance, which suggests she may have been in a fragile emotional state. However, the case remains shrouded in mystery to this day.